King Zeron stood at the enormous window of his crystal palace, looking out at the 3 purple moons that lit up his world. His planet, called Asteria, was beautiful beyond imagination. Cities made of living crystal grew from the ground like trees, and floating gardens drifted through the sky like colorful clouds. But tonight, none of this beauty could ease the pain in his heart. It had been exactly 18 years since his daughter vanished. 18 long years of searching every corner of the galaxy, and still no sign of Princess Kira anywhere. The king remembered that terrible day like it happened yesterday. He was getting ready for an important meeting with leaders from other planets. These meetings were crucial. They helped keep peace between different worlds and prevented wars that could destroy entire civilizations. As the ruler of one of the most advanced planets in their galaxy, King Zeron took these responsibilities very seriously. But his daughter Kira had always been different from other royal children. While most princesses her age were interested in fancy dresses and royal parties, Kira spent her time in the palace laboratories. She loved learning about other worlds, other species, and especially about the mysterious portals that could transport people across vast distances in space. The portal room was supposed to be off-limits to everyone except trained scientists and military personnel. These machines were incredibly powerful and dangerous. They could tear holes in the fabric of space itself, creating doorways between worlds that were millions of light-years apart. One small mistake could send someone to a place where they could never return, or worse, scatter their atoms across the universe. But Princess Kira was curious and brilliant, perhaps too much for her own good. She had been secretly studying the portal technology for months, sneaking into the laboratory late at night when the scientists went home. She had learned to read the complex symbols and understand the energy patterns that made the portals work. On that fateful morning, while King Zeron was preparing for his diplomatic meeting, Kira made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She had discovered something in the old royal archives, ancient star maps that showed the locations of primitive worlds that their people had never visited. One particular planet caught her attention. The records called it a blue world, inhabited by a young species that had barely begun to explore their own solar system. The teenage princess thought she was clever enough to make a quick trip to this mysterious world and return before anyone noticed she was gone. She had studied the portal controls for months and felt confident she could handle the technology. What she didn't realize was that the portal system had been experiencing unusual energy fluctuations for weeks. The palace engineers were planning to shut it down for repairs, but they hadn't gotten around to it yet. When Kira entered the portal chamber that morning, she carefully entered the coordinates for the blue world. The machine hummed to life, creating a swirling vortex of energy that glowed with an eerie blue light. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and disappeared into the portal. But something went terribly wrong. The energy fluctuations that the engineers had been monitoring suddenly spiked to dangerous levels. The portal became unstable, crackling, with wild electricity that danced across the chamber walls. Alarms began blaring throughout the palace as the machine overloaded. Within seconds, the portal system suffered a complete meltdown, destroying itself in a spectacular explosion of light and energy. When the palace guards rushed into the chamber, they found nothing but twisted metal and shattered crystal. The portal was completely destroyed, and Princess Kira was nowhere to be found. There was no way to know where she had gone, or even if she had survived the journey. King Zeron arrived at the scene within minutes, still wearing his formal robes for the diplomatic meeting he would never attend. When he saw the destroyed portal and realized what had happened, the mighty king fell to his knees. His advisors had never seen him show such emotion. This was a man who had faced alien invasions, natural disasters, and political crises with calm strength. But the thought of losing his only child broke something inside him. The search began immediately. King Zeron canceled all his royal duties and devoted every resource of his kingdom to finding his daughter. He sent out hundreds of scout ships to explore every known planet in their galaxy. He contacted allies and even former enemies, begging them to help search their territories. He offered enormous rewards for any information about a young Asterian female who might have appeared on their worlds. Months turned into years, and years turned into decades. The king aged rapidly during this time, his once dark hair turning silver and deep lines appearing on his face. His advisors begged him to accept that his daughter was gone and return to his royal duties, but he refused to give up hope. The people of Asteria watched their beloved king transform from a confident leader into a haunted man obsessed with finding his lost child. He spent most of his time in the palace observatory, scanning the stars and studying maps of distant galaxies. He learned about thousands of worlds he had never heard of before, always hoping that one of them might hold the key to finding Kira. As the 18th anniversary of his daughter's disappearance approached, King Zarin stood at his window once, again just as he had done every night for nearly 2 decades. The 3 purple moons seemed dimmer now, or perhaps it was just his tired eyes. He was older, weaker, and more alone than ever before. His advisors had long since stopped suggesting that he remarry or choose an heir from among his relatives. They knew that until he found his daughter, or learned her fate with certainty, King Zarin would never truly be able to move forward with his life. What the king didn't know was that on a small blue planet in a distant galaxy, his daughter was very much alive. She had not only survived her journey through the unstable portal, but she had also built a completely new life for herself. She had learned to love and be loved by the strange creatures who lived on that world, creatures who called themselves humans. But that part of the story was still hidden from King Zarin as he stood at his window, staring at the stars and wondering if he would ever see his precious daughter again. Little did he know that very soon a miracle would occur that would reunite them in the most unexpected way possible. The portal explosion threw Princess Kira across millions of miles of space in what felt like seconds. One moment she was standing in her father's crystal palace, and the next she was falling through a bright blue sky toward a world she had only read about in ancient books. Her protective suit, made from advanced Asterian technology, did its best to shield her from the violent journey between worlds. But even the most sophisticated equipment couldn't completely protect her from the chaos of traveling through a damaged portal. As she crashed through the atmosphere of this strange new planet, the suit sparked and smoked, its systems failing one by one. Kira hit the ground hard in the middle of a vast golden field. The impact knocked her unconscious, and for several hours she lay motionless among the tall grass that swayed gently in the warm breeze. When she finally opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a bright yellow sun hanging in a pale blue sky. This was so different from her homeworld's purple moons and crimson sky that for a moment she wondered if she was dreaming. But the pain in her body told her this was very real. Her suit was badly damaged, sparking occasionally and making strange, beeping sounds. More troubling was the fog in her mind. The violent portal journey had scrambled her memories, leaving her with only fragments of who she was and where she came from. She remembered her name and that she was from somewhere far away, but everything else was blurry and confusing. As Princess Kira struggled to sit up, she heard the rumble of an approaching vehicle. Through the golden grass, she saw a large red machine moving slowly across the field. It was unlike any technology from her world, primitive but sturdy, with big wheels and a loud engine that coughed black smoke into the air. The machine stopped nearby, and a man climbed down from it. He was tall and weathered, with kind eyes, and hands that showed the marks of hard work. His name was Robert, though Kira wouldn't learn this until later. He had been harvesting grain in his field when he spotted something unusual lying in the grass. Robert approached carefully, not sure what to expect. When he saw the young woman in the strange, damaged suit, his first instinct was to help. It didn't matter that her clothing looked like nothing he had ever seen, or that some of it seemed to glow with its own light. Someone was hurt and needed assistance, and that was all that mattered to him. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" Kira looked up at him with confusion. Her suit's translation system was still partially working, so she could understand his words, but everything about this situation felt overwhelming. This man looked completely different from her own people. His skin was darker, his features were different, and he had hair growing on his face. Yet something in his voice and eyes seemed genuinely caring. I don't know where I am," she whispered, her voice weak from the crash. Robert noticed that she spoke with an unusual accent, but he assumed she might be from another country. "You're in Montana, miss, in the United States. You've had some kind of accident. Let me help you. Get to a doctor." But as Robert tried to help her stand, Kira's damaged suit suddenly sparked and let out a loud electronic scream. The farmer jumped back in surprise, having never seen anything like it. The suit's systems were finally giving up completely, and strange lights flickered across its surface before going dark forever. "What in the world?" Robert muttered, staring at the now silent suit. But when he looked at Kira's frightened face, his concern for her well-being overcame his confusion about her strange clothing. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and helped her to his truck. During the drive to his small farmhouse, Kira stared out the window in amazement. This world was so different from Asteria. Instead of crystal cities and floating gardens, she saw wooden buildings, metal machines, and vast open spaces covered in plants. The people they passed looked similar to Robert, and they traveled in simple wheeled vehicles instead of flying, through the air. When they reached his home, Robert's wife Helen came out to meet them. She was a gentle woman with graying hair and a warm smile. Like her husband, her first reaction upon seeing the injured stranger was to offer help without asking questions. "Oh my goodness, what happened to her?" Helen asked, immediately moving to support Kira's other side. "Found her in the north field," Robert explained. "Looks like she's been in some kind of accident. Her clothes are all torn up and strange-looking." Helen didn't waste time wondering about the unusual circumstances. She helped Kira into their simple but comfortable home and began tending to her cuts and bruises. As she cleaned Kira's wounds, she noticed that the young woman's skin seemed to heal faster than normal, but she attributed this to her imagination. Over the next few days, as Kira recovered her strength, the couple learned that their mysterious guest claimed to have no memory of her past. She said her name was Kira, but she couldn't remember her last name or where she came from. The story seemed strange, but Robert and Helen had big hearts, and something about this lost young woman touched them deeply. They had lost their own daughter years earlier to a terrible illness, and caring for Kira seemed to fill a hole in their hearts that had never healed. Without discussing it much, they simply began treating her as family. "You can stay here as long as you need to," Helen told her one evening as they sat together on the farmhouse porch watching the sunset. "We've got plenty of room, and Robert could use help with the farm work." Kira felt tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a warmth she had never experienced before. In her royal life on Asteria, people had served her and obeyed her, but she had never felt this kind of unconditional acceptance and care. These simple humans were offering her something that all the wealth and power of her father's kingdom had never provided, a place where she was wanted not because of who she was, but simply because she needed help. As the weeks passed, Kira found herself falling in love with this strange new world and the people who had saved her. She learned to help with the farm work, to cook simple meals, and to find joy in small everyday moments. Her memories of home remained fuzzy, like half-remembered dreams, but her new life felt increasingly real and precious. She often looked up at the stars at night, feeling that somewhere out there was the place she had come from. but with each passing day, Earth felt more and more like home. 18 years had passed since that day in the wheat field. Princess Kira, now known simply as Kira Mitchell, had built a life she never could have imagined. The confused and injured alien girl had grown into a confident woman who could fix a broken tractor, grow prize-winning vegetables, and make the best apple pie in 3 counties. She had graduated from the local high school as the smartest student anyone had ever seen. Her teachers were amazed by how quickly she understood complex math and science, though they had no idea that her brain was actually designed for calculating hyperspace navigation and quantum physics. After high school, she went to agricultural college, where she learned advanced farming techniques that she brought back to help Robert and Helen make their farm more successful than ever. The small community of Cedar Valley had completely accepted Kira as one of their own. To them, she was just Robert and Helen's adopted daughter who had shown up with memory problems years ago. She volunteered at the local library, helped elderly neighbors with their gardens, and never missed a community event. Her strange arrival was old news now, and most people had forgotten she hadn't always lived there. But Kira's peaceful life was about to change forever. Dr. Daniel Rodriguez arrived in Cedar Valley on a Tuesday morning in early spring. He was a scientist who studied unusual energy patterns in space, and his expensive equipment had detected something very strange in this quiet farming area. His instruments showed readings that shouldn't exist on Earth, energy signatures that looked more like something from an advanced alien civilization than a rural American town. Daniel had spent months tracking these mysterious signals across the country, and they all led to this small farming community. He rented a room at the local inn and began setting up his equipment, determined to solve this scientific puzzle. Most of the locals were curious, but not particularly helpful. They couldn't imagine what a big city scientist would find interesting about their quiet town. But when Daniel mentioned he was looking into unusual energy readings, old Robert Mitchell suggested he talk to his daughter Kira. "That girl's got a brain like you wouldn't believe," Robert told him. "Always been interested in science stuff. Maybe she can help you figure out what you're looking for." When Daniel first met Kira at the Mitchell farm, he expected to find a typical small-town woman with maybe a high school understanding of science. Instead, he found himself talking to someone who immediately understood his complex equipment and asked questions that showed an incredibly advanced knowledge of physics. "These readings you're getting," Kira said, studying his computer screen, "with intense focus, they look like quantum residue patterns. Like something that left an energy footprint in the fabric of space itself." Daniel stared at her in surprise. "How do you know about quantum residue? That's cutting-edge theoretical physics. They don't teach that in agricultural college." Kira felt her heart skip a beat. She had been so careful for 18 years to hide how much she really knew about advanced science. But something about Daniel's work had excited her scientific mind, and she had spoken without thinking. I read a lot," she said quickly. "Science journals, research papers online, it's just a hobby." But Daniel wasn't convinced. Over the next few days, as they worked together to track the energy signatures, he noticed more and more things that didn't add up. Kira could solve complex equations in her head that would take him hours with a calculator. She understood concepts about space and time that even most professional scientists struggled with. And sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, he caught her staring at the stars with an expression of deep longing. The energy readings were getting stronger, and Daniel's equipment was picking up patterns that seemed almost like a language. As they worked late into the night in his makeshift laboratory, trying to decode the mysterious signals, Kira found herself enjoying Daniel's company more and more. He was different from the other men in town. While they were good, honest people, Daniel shared her love of learning and discovery. He talked about distant galaxies and theoretical physics with the same passion that the local farmers talked about crop rotation and weather patterns. For the first time in 18 years, Kira felt like she was talking to someone who might actually understand her true nature. Daniel was falling for her, too, though he tried to keep things professional. There was something magical about working alongside someone so brilliant and curious. Kira had a way of looking at problems from angles he had never considered, and her insights often led to breakthrough moments in their research. One evening, as they were analyzing a particularly strong energy signature, Kira suddenly went very quiet. The patterns on Daniel's screen looked familiar to her. They reminded her of something from her childhood, though her damaged memories made it hard to be sure. "Daniel," she said slowly, "what if these energy readings aren't from something that happened recently? What if they're old? Like really old?" "What do you mean?" he asked. "What if something arrived here 18 years ago and left these energy footprints behind?" Daniel ran the calculations, and his eyes widened. "You're right. According to this data, whatever caused these readings happened exactly 18 years ago. But that would mean—" He looked at Kira with growing understanding. The timeline matched perfectly with when she had appeared in Cedar Valley with no memory of her past. Her incredible knowledge of advanced science, her sometimes strange way of looking at the world, the way she seemed to instinctively understand concepts that took him years of study to grasp. "Kira," he said gently, "I think you need to tell me the truth about where you really came from." Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. For 18 years, she had kept her secret, protecting not just herself, but also Robert and Helen from the incredible truth. But looking at Daniel's kind, understanding face, she realized she was tired of hiding. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible," she whispered. "But you're a scientist. You believe in things that seem impossible, right?" Daniel nodded, his heart racing with anticipation. "My real name is Princess Kira of Asteria. I'm not from this world, Daniel. I'm from a planet so far away that your telescopes can't even see it. And I think your equipment isn't just detecting old energy signatures. I think it's picking up a signal from home." Daniel stared at Kira in complete silence for what felt like an eternity. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. Princess of another planet? Alien royalty living on a farm in Montana? It should have sounded crazy, but somehow, everything finally made perfect sense. "Show me," he said quietly. "Show me proof." Kira nodded, wiping away a tear that had rolled down her cheek. She led him to the old barn behind the farmhouse, to a corner where hay bales had been stacked for years. She moved them aside, revealing a hidden metal box buried in the dirt floor. Inside the box were objects that made Daniel's scientific mind spin with excitement. There was a piece of her damaged suit that still glowed with a soft blue light after 18 years. Strange crystals that seemed to pulse with their own energy. And most incredible of all, a small device covered in symbols that looked nothing like any human language. "This was my emergency beacon," Kira explained, holding up the device. "Every member of the royal family carries one. It's supposed to send a signal home if we're ever in danger. But it was damaged in the crash, and I could never figure out how to fix it with Earth technology." Daniel examined the beacon with trembling hands. "But if we could fix it, if we could get it working—" "My father would know I'm alive," Kira whispered. "After all these years, he would finally know what happened to me." They worked together for 3 straight days, combining Daniel's knowledge of Earth electronics with Kira's understanding of Asterian technology. It was like trying to make a smartphone work with parts from a 1950s radio, but slowly they began to make progress. On the 3rd night, as they connected the final wire, the beacon suddenly came to life. It hummed with energy, and the alien symbols on its surface began to glow brighter and brighter. Then, with a sound like singing crystal, it sent a powerful signal racing across the galaxy toward Asteria. Meanwhile, on the distant crystal world of Asteria, King Zarin was in his private study, reading reports from the latest search missions. At 68 years old, he looked much older than his years. The long search for his daughter had taken a terrible toll on him. His once strong shoulders were now bent with grief, and his eyes held a sadness that seemed to grow deeper with each passing day. His closest advisor, General Vex, entered the room with a concerned expression. "Your Majesty, you should eat something. You've barely touched your food for days." King Zarin waved him away without looking up. "I'm not hungry. Old friend, have the scout ships reported back from the Andromeda sector?" "Yes, sir. Nothing. Just like all the others." General Vex had watched his king slowly destroy himself with this endless search. "Your Majesty, perhaps it's time to accept that Princess Kira that she may not—" "Don't," the king said firmly. "Don't you dare say those words. She's alive." "I know she's alive. A father knows these things." It was at that exact moment that alarms began blaring throughout the Crystal Palace. Not the urgent alarms of attack or emergency, but the special tone that indicated an incoming royal beacon signal. General Vex and King Zarin stared at each other in shock. No royal beacon had been activated in over a century. They rushed to the communication center, where technicians were frantically working at their instruments. The chief communications officer, an elderly woman named Commander Arya, looked up with tears in her eyes. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "we're receiving a royal beacon signal. The identification code. It's Princess Kira's beacon." King Zarin felt his knees go weak. General Vex had to catch him to keep him from falling. "Are you certain?" the king whispered. "Absolutely certain, sir. The signal is weak and far away, but it's definitely hers. And Your Majesty? It's coming from a primitive world in a distant galaxy, a world the databases identify as Earth." For several minutes, King Zarin couldn't speak. 18 years of searching, 18 years of hoping and praying and refusing to give up. And now, this miracle. His daughter was alive. "How long to prepare a rescue mission?" he asked, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Your Majesty," General Vex said carefully, "this planet Earth is incredibly far away. Our fastest ships would take months to reach it, and the databases say it's inhabited by a primitive species. We'd be making first contact with an entirely new civilization." "I don't care if I have to cross 1,000 galaxies," King Zarin declared, standing tall for the first time in years. "My daughter is alive, and I'm going to bring her home." But as more detailed information came through from the beacon, the king's excitement was mixed with growing confusion. The signal wasn't just sending Kira's identification code, it was also transmitting personal messages, cultural observations, and data about her life on Earth. Commander Arya read the incoming messages with increasing surprise. "Your Majesty, Princess Kira has been living among the humans for 18 years. She's integrated into their society. The message mentions something about Earth parents and someone she refers to as the man I love." King Zarin felt his heart clench. His little girl, the princess who had disappeared at 17, was now a 35-year-old woman who had built an entire life on an alien world. She had found love, found family, found a home among strangers. "She speaks of these humans with great affection," Commander Arya continued. "She calls Earth her home now, and this man she mentions, she describes him as her partner, her equal, someone who understands her mind and shares her love of learning." General Vex watched his old friend carefully. He could see the conflict building in the king's eyes. Joy at finding his daughter alive, but uncertainty about the woman she had become. "Prepare the fastest ship we have," King Zarin commanded. "But this won't be a rescue mission. This will be a diplomatic mission. We're going to meet this human civilization that my daughter has chosen to call home." and we're going to meet the man who has won her heart." As preparations began for the most important journey in Astarian history, King Zaron stood alone on his balcony, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, across impossible distances, his daughter was alive and well. She had survived, she had thrived, and she had found love. But the king couldn't help wondering, after 18 years of being human, would Princess Kira still want to be his daughter? 3 months after the beacon signal reached Asteria, the people of Cedar Valley woke up to the most extraordinary morning in human history. It started with a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, like the world's largest tuning fork vibrating through the air. Kira was in the kitchen making breakfast when she heard it. She dropped her coffee cup, and it shattered on the floor. After 18 years, she recognized that sound. It was the harmonic frequency of Asterian ship engines. "Daniel!" she called, out, running to where he was setting up his equipment in the backyard. "They're here! My father is here!" Daniel looked up at the sky and saw something that made his scientific mind struggle to process what he was seeing. A massive ship, easily the size of 3 football stadiums, was slowly descending through the clouds. It was made of what looked like living crystal that shifted between different colors as it moved. The ship was so beautiful and advanced that it seemed more like a work of art than a machine. All across Cedar Valley, people were coming out of their houses, pointing at the sky in amazement. Some were taking pictures with their phones, though the devices kept malfunctioning near the alien ship. Others were calling the police, the military, or anyone who might know what to do when aliens showed up in your small town. But the ship didn't land in the town center or near any government buildings. Instead, it settled gently in the large field behind the Mitchell farm, the same field where Kira had crashed 18 years earlier. Robert and Helen came running out of the house, their faces pale with shock. In all the years since they had found Kira, they had known this day might come, but they had never really prepared themselves for it. "Kira, honey," Helen said, her voice trembling, "are you ready for this?" Kira took a deep breath and squeezed Daniel's hand. "I don't know if anyone could ever be ready for this, but it's time." A doorway opened in the side of the crystal ship, and a ramp extended to the ground. The first person to emerge was a tall figure in elegant robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Even from a distance, Kira recognized him immediately. "Daddy," she whispered. King Zaron looked older than she remembered, and sadder. His hair had turned completely silver, and there were deep lines around his eyes that spoke of years of worry and grief. But when he saw her standing in the field, his face transformed with pure joy. They ran toward each other across the wheat field. And when they met in the middle, King Zaron swept his daughter into his arms, just like he used to when she was a little girl. Both of them were crying, 18 years of separation finally ending in this moment. "My little star," he whispered, using his old nickname for her. "I never stopped looking. I never stopped believing you were alive." "I'm sorry, Daddy," Kira sobbed. "I'm so sorry I left. I just wanted to see other worlds, and everything went wrong." They held each other for a long time, while Daniel, Robert, and Helen watched from a respectful distance. Other people from the town had started gathering at the edges of the field, but local law enforcement was keeping them back, not sure what else to do in this unprecedented situation. Finally, King Zaron stepped back to look at his daughter. "You look so different," he said, touching her face gently. "You're a woman now, and you look happy, really happy." "I am happy, Daddy. These people saved me. They gave me a family when I had nothing." Kira led her father over to meet the 3 most important people in her Earth life. The introductions were awkward at first. King Zaron was used to people bowing and speaking formally to him, but Robert just extended his hand for a firm handshake. "Your Majesty," Robert said simply, "you raised a fine daughter. She's been a blessing to our family." Helen, ever the mother, immediately started fussing over the alien king. "You look tired from your long journey. Would you like some coffee? Or something to eat?" King Zarin was amazed by their casual kindness. These simple humans were treating him not as a powerful alien ruler, but as Kira's father, who had come a long way to see his child. But it was Daniel who captured the king's attention most. This was the man his daughter loved, the human who had helped her reconnect with her home world. "So you're the scientist," King Zarin said, studying Daniel carefully. "Kira has told me about you in her messages. She says you understand her mind." Daniel felt nervous but spoke honestly. "Your Majesty, I love your daughter. Not because she's a princess, not because she's from another world, but because of who she is as a person. She's brilliant, kind, and she makes me want to be a better man." King Zarin nodded slowly. Over the next few hours, as they talked and shared stories, he began to understand what his daughter had found on Earth. These humans had given her something that all the wealth and power of Asteria never could: the freedom to choose her own path and be loved for who she was, not what she was. As the day went on, more people arrived. Government officials, scientists, reporters, and curious citizens all wanted to witness this historic first contact. But King Zaron insisted on keeping things simple and peaceful. "We come in friendship," he announced to the growing crowd. "Your world gave my daughter a home when she needed one. Now our worlds can learn from each other." That evening, as they sat around the Mitchell family dinner table sharing a simple meal, King Zarin made a decision that would change history. "Kira," he said, "I came here thinking I would take you home. But I see now that you are home. If you want to stay on Earth, I will support your choice." Kira felt tears in her eyes again. "Daddy, I love you, and I miss Asteria. But Earth is my home now. These people are my family." "Then I have a proposal," the king said. "What if you didn't have to choose? What if you could be a bridge between our worlds, our official ambassador to Earth?" And that's exactly what happened. Kira became the first interplanetary ambassador in human history, splitting her time between Earth and Asteria. Daniel joined her in this work, becoming Earth's leading expert on alien technology and helping facilitate peaceful exchanges between the civilizations. Robert and Helen were invited to visit Asteria as honored guests, where they were amazed by crystal cities and floating gardens. But they always returned to their simple farm, which had become the unofficial embassy between two worlds. The alien. King had found his daughter, but more importantly, he had learned that sometimes love means letting go and embracing change. And in a quiet farming community in Montana, two very different civilizations began building a friendship that would last for generations.